Hi guys, it's Sunshine and welcome back to my studio in 2021. Yes, we have started a brand new year and hopefully this 2021 will be so much better than 2020 was. Anyway, what we're doing today is we're jumping straight back into our 6 authors, 6 questions series. Now today's episode is all about writing your very first picture book, and I'm very excited because I have a wonderful group of authors to tell us exactly how to do that. So our lovely bunch of authors are Marianne Pierres, Meredith Costain, Adrian Beck, Adam Wallace, Michelle Worthington, and Dannika Patterson. So take it away from me, Dannika.
My very first kids book was written over the course of a few too many years probably, because I failed to do an important thing. So I had imagined this world, I had started the story, I knew what I wanted to write about very clearly and the characters it would involve, and then I merrily forgot to finish it. So I had this story that was in progress and I'd constantly rewrite the beginning or the first 3 quarters, but I would not finish it. Not on purpose, I didn't think, but I think subliminally, I thought, well, when I finish this story, I'm going to have to do something with it. And that seemed very scary to me, not knowing very much at all about the world of publishing. So I think I procrastinated in terms of I spent a lot of time actively writing, and I probably started 25 stories. Did I finish one? No, I did not. So finishing the story is a really important step, and then being brave enough to send it out into the world, be that sharing it with a critique buddy or an author friend, or paying for it to be professionally edited, sending it to a publisher. All of those things, when you're doing them for the first time, can seem really intimidating, and I think it's only by doing them that fear is put back in its place. Because I don't know about you, but for me, the idea of doing something for the first time is usually far worse. It's a far bigger fear than I feel when I actually go ahead and do it. I feel quite good because, our brains love to finish things and accomplish things. But that's still a battle I have to fight. I have a couple of stories that I'm super passionate about at the moment, and I know I'm avoiding finishing them because I'm scared about putting them on their own 2 feet and sending them into the world. It's petrifying every time, and you'd think you'd get used to it, but I don't know, I think I'm getting better. It doesn't take me years anymore, but I do like to avoid still sometimes the finishing bit.
Okay, so now with your experience, what would you suggest that new authors do to get their stories onto paper?
I think that the best thing or the best advice I could give to new authors who are looking to get their stories onto paper is to set aside some time that is sacred for writing and build a fence around it. Protect your time. What I did to get myself over the line when I was finishing my first manuscript that I intended to send out into the world was I booked 2 hours every Monday. I had 2 very small children at the time, and so my house was a 1-bedroom chaotic mess. So I asked a friend to sit with my kids for 2 hours during their nap time, just in case they woke up. I booked myself a quiet room at my local library, and unless something was going horribly wrong in life, I protected that time. And it was only 2 hours, and it was only once a week, but it moved me forward. Everything I did moved me forward. If it was a sentence, if I hadn't slept the night before and writing was like taking blood from a stone, I still sat there for the 2 hours and protected my writing time and got my ideas on paper. And that was a big game changer for me.
How do you write your very first kids book? That's a very interesting question. Well, I think a lot of people these days are really want to write picture books. Picture books are so popular always, and even though we've gone to ebooks and things, there's nothing like reading in real time with a real picture book, and so lots of people do. So I think a picture book can be a good place to start because it's a condensed storyline. You don't have to worry about subplots and things, so perhaps that's a good thing to do. You just need to be aware of a few things, but getting that idea down onto paper, I actually have a really good idea. to help you with that. And it's basically just brainstorming. I think some people call it mind mapping, and it's a matter of perhaps coming up with an idea, just the basic idea first, and then putting in lots of little brainstormy shoots. Where could this go to? You can do this with a friend. It's always good to have a writing buddy, I think, to bounce ideas off. And in fact, I'm lucky because I've got one up the other end of the hallway. But often I don't wait to hear what they're saying. The fact that I'm actually asking the question and saying, okay, I'm really stuck, I'm not quite sure what I want to do now, and I'm going to put this question to you, and they start, no, stop, I've already got the idea. The fact that I've actually, my brain has jumped into gear and I've started to think about it, it solves the problem for me. So writing buddies are good even if they're passive, I think. But I'm going to show you this tip of mind mapping, where you start off with something like getting a pet. Everybody wants a pet. And then you can shoot off in different directions, and because you're going off in all these different directions, some of them are pretty obvious, but you might stumble on something that's fantastic, and then you go from there. Always remembering you need to be thinking of a problem. No problem, no story.
Writing your very first kids' book, I think you're actually in a good position because you don't know all the things that could go wrong, you know? So ignorance is bliss when you're writing your first kids' book. My first kids' book was loosely inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Oh,
and in my genius that I was in my early 20s, I decided, you know, I could just replace vampires with werewolves, and suddenly I've got a whole new concept and it's going to be amazing. And so I sat down and I just bashed out like 50,000 word novel about, you know, a young girl taking on werewolves, right? And I think I learnt a lot from actually doing it, because, you know, you do it once and then you think about all the ways you would never do it like that ever again. Yeah. So now what I do is, instead of just sitting down, I used to just sit down and bash it out. Now what I do is I think of a concept, and that's the most exciting part. In fact, I say this to kids when I'm in schools. There are two most exciting parts about writing. That is when you think of the concept, that first moment when you think of the concept and you're buzzing with excitement. You think, this is going to take over the world. I'm going to be a millionaire and everyone's going to think I'm a genius, and they'll have a parade for me down Burke Street. It's going to be amazing. That's quite a buzz. And then the end bit, where you see kids reading it, or you see it on the shelf in a bookshop, that sort of thing, is also really exciting. Everything in the middle is darn hard work, and it's a hard, long slog. But if you can remember that you've got that good bit to come to, then that'll get you through the hard bit in the middle. So I come up with the concept, that's the exciting bit, and then I plan out roughly how the book's going to go, chapter by chapter, and then the ending. And I like to have an ending that I know that I'm sort of building towards, because otherwise you don't have a safety net. And then I'll write it, but whilst you're writing it, you've got to be open to a better idea, sort of evolving as you're going. So sometimes that happens. So you've got to be open to a little bit of, you know, flexibility as you're going. But that's just a way that I do it now, because I really want to minimize the amount of time you start writing and going down dead ends, and then suddenly someone's got a backstory for 4 chapters and eventually you don't even need them in the book. So nowadays I plan it out a whole lot more than I used to. But I really think you can learn a lot from sitting down and writing that first book, just bashing it out, because you'll learn what not to do next time, but also you'll have that first manuscript. And once you've got that first manuscript, you can start molding it and fashioning it into something that someone else might want to read at some stage.
Badly. You write it terribly. You just have to start writing. And I think you can maybe not start writing. Reading lots of kids' books is really important, because then you do get an idea of how they're structured. Even a picture book has almost that movie type arc, where you have this thing at the start, then things go bad, there's a low point, and then they win at the end. And so reading other books, just seeing how they work, seeing what kids like, and then just writing and seeing what comes out. I do a lot of free writing, and so often just get up in the morning and just write for 10 minutes. So it's not writing a picture book, but it's just the act of writing. And then just then looking for ideas, and I'll do things like I'll just write down 10 titles of a book that I think might be cool, and just whatever pops out, and then just try writing them. I think the biggest thing about writing your first book is you just have to write, and you have to be accepting of the fact that your first stuff might not be great. It may be. There's a good chance you've got to just write and practice and find your voice. So your first book may not be the voice you have as you go on as a writer, but it's your voice at that time, and it'll develop. But you've got to do that step first to get to what your actual true voice is.
There are so many ways to write your very first kids book, but for me, I actually went back and had a look at the type of things that I was writing when I was a kid. And I have this book from when I was in grade 5, and it's got all the poetry that I was writing back then. And my eldest son said I had to go to the museum to get it out because it's so old. But basically, the very first poem in here is called When the Sun Goes Down, and you can see why I'm not an illustrator. So this was actually the inspiration for my very first picture book. So it was a poem that I wrote about what do the Australian animals get up to at night when I'm asleep, because that was a huge thing for me when I was little. Like, I always thought that my toys were coming to life, and fully, like, I thought of Toy Story before anyone else did. And so I decided that when I was going to write for kids, I really wanted to go back and have a look at what sort of mindset did I have, what were the sort of things I was thinking about. And I think that's really, really important when you're writing your first picture book, is to remember you're not writing this for you now, you're writing this for you then, but not in a way that you're writing for kids a million years ago like me, but what do kids want? What are kids thinking about? And it doesn't matter where kids live all over the world, there are some universal themes and things that they care about. And if you can tap into that and share your personal experience, I think that makes a great first picture book.
Yeah, great. So Michelle, for someone starting out doing kids books, what would be your best advice for getting those ideas onto paper?
I think for getting the ideas onto paper, the first thing you need to do is not judge yourself as you write. So as an adult, we tend to want to edit as we go, and we tend to already thinking, is this any good? Is this going to get published? Should I be changing this? What about the story arc? Forget about it. What you need to be focusing on is the character, the setting. Does this make you feel something? What is the purpose for this? What is going to be the emotion that you want the child reading it to experience? And if you focus on that instead of necessarily all the technical stuff, that's going to help you get it out of your head and onto paper.
So how do you write your first book? Well, honestly, I don't think there is a right answer for that. I think it's very, very personal. I think everybody writes their first book a different way. I can share my experience, but that may be different to your experience. For me, I was writing my first long book when I had 3 young children. So I would get 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and I would just quickly go in and type like crazy. So I think, but one of the hardest things people find is that they start writing and they think, oh, this is really bad. This is no good. Okay, I'm going to stop, or I'll delete that. And what I would say is that everything can be fixed, and you can't write a book if you don't write words. So you need to just tell your brain to give you permission to write badly. That's how you write your first book. And it's not just your first book. That's how you write forever after. Give your brain permission to allow you to just write. And then go back and fix it and make it pretty, or make it better, or cut bits out. So I think it's just that we go into writing books with too much pressure on ourselves. It should be a joy. It should be a journey that you want to go on, because you spend a lot of time, especially if you write a big adult's book. You can spend a year, or you can spend 5 years writing that. So if you're not enjoying what you're doing, then, where's the fun in that? So I would say start on a page, write whatever you think that day, and then write whatever you think the next day and the next day. Probably the only other thing I would say is try and not leave months in between. You know, if you can get back to that story at least once a week, even if it's only 10 words, it will keep it working around in the back of your brain. And your brain's amazing if you let it play with ideas. It'll serve you well.
Thank you so much to all of our authors. You were brilliant as always. Now, the things I loved about this episode is our authors have just encouraged us to start writing. This was a massive theme throughout this whole episode, is they're just telling us to get some words onto paper or in your computer, I suppose, and just getting it there, getting your thoughts down and starting. That is probably the biggest hurdle, I think, for most of us, is to just stare at that blank piece of paper or that blank computer screen and start doing. But thankfully our authors gave us some really good practices to do to get into that, whether it's complete nonsense that we're writing or something else. I think that was awesome. Something else that made me feel, I guess, better about my writing is that our authors were saying that your first stuff is not going to be good. I mean, it might be good. Some of you are probably really great geniuses, but I'm sure my first books are terrible. And it's nice to know that it's okay to be like that. And I guess that's when the old adage, practice makes perfect, comes into it, is, you know, you're never good when you first start something, and it's nice to know that they weren't good when they started something too. It's the same in illustration. You can't just become an artist, you have to work your way up and get better. And they had some really great tips on what to do to get better. Go to writers groups, go to conferences, meet other writers and get feedback from people, get kids to read your books. That seems to be a really good thing. Get other people to read your books and give you feedback on your writing, because you're going to rewrite things over and over and over again, and the only way you're going to know that it's any good or not is if other people read it. So that is such a good idea. It's exactly the same in illustration. Plus you move plus you meet all these other amazing people within this fantastic industry and you make friends for life. It sounds perfect to me. Anyway guys, that is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I personally am going to start rewriting my books. I haven't written very many, but I'm pretty sure they're bad. Next week's episode is our final big it's the final episode, and it's the 6th episode is what I'm trying to say. It's the one that you guys do not want to miss. It's all about getting published, and it's really, really good. Not to toot our own horns, me and my authors, it's really great. If you are an aspiring author or writer, make sure you go check out Adam Wallace's and Michelle Worthington's websites, particularly this week, because they have some amazing courses that you can look into for getting started in the kids book industry. So writing your first kids book and, you know, what to do, all the tips and things that, you know, I don't know. It's all very helpful, so please go and have a look. Anyway, as I said, that is it. I hope you all have a brilliant week. If you want to see more of my work, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. And as always, I'm still twitching on a Friday night, 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And I have started a Discord server, so go check that out. Anyway, guys, I will see you all next week. I hope you all have a lovely day and keep on painting, I suppose, and writing. We're going to do more of that writing stuff. From me and all my authors.
In a world, crocodile.
Thanks for having me.
Bye!